Welcome to this episode of Mainline Connect. My name is Jennifer Lynn Robinson, and my guest today is Ellen Davis, the Regional Manager of Merry Maids. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks,
Happy
Jennifer.
to have you. So what we'd like to do is start off the show with a networking topic. And, I'm very interested to hear how you think networking is different when you network for an independent business versus for a franchise.
Well, there's a very big difference. In my first life, I was a small business owner that became a franchisor, and so I had the experience of both being a small business owner, a startup really,
right,
and then a franchisor. And now in my new life, I work for a franchisee who's a major franchisee of Merry Maids, which is a very large company. It's very different because those people who are in business for themselves, who are small business people, are very different beasts than those people who are franchisees. So what you might say to a small business owner is very different in scope than what you might say to someone who's a franchisee. A franchisee is looking for more of a branded approach because they're used to being part of a big brand. A small company is usually by themselves, or maybe a one-off has another location, or something like that. And so there are very different kinds of approaches that I would use to network with one versus another. Selling services to one versus another. The small business person is much more entrepreneurial, at least at the onset. And so they're going to have a lot more questions. There's a lot more budgetary constraints usually because money is a little bit tighter in their company and they control it more diligently. Not that a franchisee wouldn't control their economics, but there's prescribed amounts that needs to be spent in every category of spending in their financial records.
Okay, all right. So I noticed from reading about you before the interview, you've been involved with small business from a very young age, your family, and there was a family bakery, is that right?
Yes, there was.
So tell us about how all of that started. And
Well, as a young child, not that long ago, no, very long ago, we had a family business in Brooklyn. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I'm a New Yorker, like some of the political candidates are now. And we had a family business. My father, my uncle, and my grandfather were involved in the bakery business. My father was a bread baker, my uncle a cake baker, and I started working when I was 10 years old, when I could see over the counter. Before I could see over the counter, they couldn't use me, but once I could see over the bakery counter, I started working in the bakery business and worked until I graduated from college and got married and moved away. So I've always been interested in the food business. Food is a passion of mine. I like to eat. I like to play with food. I like to read about food.
Right.
I like to talk about food.
So, I mean, that's it's at least like 8 or 10 years you're describing that you're working in the family business.
Right.
What did you learn? I mean, at such a young age, I'm sure you learned a lot.
I did. I learned a tremendous amount. Not only was I involved, but my cousin, my uncle's son, was involved at the same time, and he and I are about the same age.
Okay.
And so he actually went on to open up bakeries himself and is currently an owner of quite a large bakery business in North Jersey, having started a very large brand himself of baking. And he sold that out to a larger company, and now he still has a retail bakery operation.
Okay.
So I did learn a lot. I learned that owning your own business is a 24/7 job.
Sure.
That's really what I learned, and it's really hard work. And not that people don't work hard when they're an employee, but it's very different because it's your life's work.
It's a lot more personal. You're a lot more vested.
Yeah, much more.
Yeah.
And that was a lesson learned from a very young age.
Yeah. So then I noticed you kind of made a turnaround and you decided to go into what is speech pathology.
I did.
Which seems like a turnaround from everything else we're going to discuss. So kind of what led you down that path?
Well, what happened was I grew up in a family where I was the first one to go to college.
Okay.
In a place where everyone that I knew went to college. It wasn't an issue or a question. It was a have to. It was just an assumption that that's what happens when you graduate from high school. You're going to go to college. And so when I found myself going to college, I needed to do something that I felt was interesting to me, that I didn't just want to be. I went through the generation of, what are women? Women are teachers, nurses, or social workers.
Okay.
And so none of those really interested me as much as doing something a little more creative. And so I started to look at the therapies, and speech pathology was one that interested me.
So now, did you actually practice as a speech pathologist at some point? Or?
I did.
Yeah.
I worked right here in Marple, Newtown.
Okay.
My very first job when I moved to Philadelphia, to Pennsylvania, was with Marple, Newtown. I was with them for 7 years.
Okay.
I was.
So then what pulled you back into this whole entrepreneur life?
Well, I like to say that I was fortunate when our children were very little to be able to be home with them for a while.
Okay.
Which unfortunately today many households don't have that luxury of doing. And so I was home for about 3 or 4 years with my children, who were 2 years apart, so they were very little. And at the time, my sister-in-law, Susan Ellman, learned how to do a vegetable crudité in a cooking school, in Charlotte Ann Albertson's cooking school, who is, very big here on the main line for a long time. And I think her daughter now has carried on her tradition.
Okay. Yeah.
And so Susan learned how to do the vegetable arrangements and made them for friends. And one time somebody from her synagogue asked her if she could do it in fruit for a very, very large party. And she created what is now a floral fruit design, which we know, and it's kind of a generic floral fruit arrangement that's all over everywhere internationally. And so she created that in her kitchen and told me about it the next day, how people were amazed at what it looked like and how wonderful it was, and it was fruit on a skewer and you could eat it and it was beautiful, and etc. And she told me about it on the phone, and I said, oh, well, I'm very interested in food. I really like being around food. And so I said to her, I'm going to come over, show me what you did. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what we can do. I think there's a business here because so many people were so excited about the product. And so I did. And we decided that we'd try doing it just by word of mouth and started on the weekends. And our husbands wound up watching our children because we got busier and busier and busier. And after about a year, we took a place because our husbands decided that we couldn't live like this anymore.
Making everything at home.
Nothing but fruit in our refrigerator.
It's healthy at least.
Yeah. Our poor kids, they used to go to the refrigerator and I would slam it shut and say, that's not for you, it's sold.
Go out for you.
Go away.
Yeah.
So we took a place on Westchester Pike.
Okay.
Thought we'd maybe work a couple days a week, and truly from the very first day that we put the key in the door, we went to work every day and just grew from there.
That's amazing. So, I mean, of course it's something that we look at as part of, the norm today, but this was the first fruit bouquet that was created.
Yeah. Yes. We started out as Incredibly Edible Delights. When we started, it was a mouthful to say. It probably wasn't the best name. And when internet in the 90s, when we needed to get a website going, at that time it was too many characters to register.
Okay.
You could only have, I think, 25 characters, and we had more than that in our name. So we just converted it to Fruit Flowers, which was another one of our trademarks. So from that point on, we were fruitflowers.com.
Okay.
And it was easier to remember and a little bit more about what we were. We did that for about 30 years.
So at the beginning, I know you said there was a lot of excitement, with people that were interested in purchasing them and they hadn't seen anything like that before. Was there any kind of the opposite? Was there any pushback because it was kind of a new product? Were some people sort of like, you're never going to make this work? Who's going to buy a fruit bouquet? Because, I know as an entrepreneur, you always have that kind of pushback. Like, what do you think you're doing? Why do you think you can do this? And, how did you handle that?
Well, we were our own worst enemy very often because we were the ones who held the company back. More than externally, it was an internal thing because we just couldn't believe. Like, I kept thinking, why do people want this? It's gonna go away. It's just gonna go away. It's gonna be like one of those fads, like croissant places were for a while. That things come and go in fads, and it's not gonna last. It's not a lasting concept. But the more we did it, the more we realized that it was universally accepted by the public, and with people becoming more health conscious. you know, and more aware of their spend. That people started to say, well, flowers are beautiful. I love flowers.
I love
but,
flowers. Yeah.
you know, when you send flowers, they die. When you send fruit flowers, they're beautiful. People eat them, and you feel like there's not going to be anything thrown away besides the skewers. So it was a totally edible arrangement. It was, you know, something that was eaten down to the core.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So you feel like it was more, the public was behind it, and you guys were like second guessing the whole thing.
We were.
Interesting. Yeah.
We were.
So now you and I met, you know, several years ago when you were actually giving a talk about this first business that you had, and kind of what went wrong. So, you know, I think it's kind of an important story. I mean, for me, I was starting as an entrepreneur at the time where I heard your talk, and I thought you had a lot of great advice to offer, which, you know, from your perspective, I'm sure you don't want to have to be offering it. You'd rather it turned out differently. But I think for our viewers, a lot of, you know, entrepreneurs, small business owners would love to hear more about kind of that whole process. Yeah.
Well, we certainly learned a lot along the way. We learned a lot about business. We were not schooled in business in any way, shape, or form. We were very raw, you know, in that respect, and didn't really have a lot of advice. My feeling today, what I tell people if they're just starting out and they have a new concept or they're going into a new venture, get good advice. We kind of went by the seat of our pants for way too long and allowed things to happen to us. Instead of being the drivers, we were more like the passengers being pulled. So I would liken it to the fact that we were never taken along the road. We were never advised how to handle situations. We just came upon them and made a decision, ill-advised some of the time. And that was probably the biggest pitfall for us.
So what ultimately happened?
Well, what ultimately happened was that we did not make some very good decisions, and ultimately we brought somebody into our shop at the time to do some work having nothing to do with the actual fruit baskets themselves, and it was somebody in IT. And at the time, we're talking about in the 90s. And so we didn't have anyone sign any confidentiality. We didn't do anything legally. We just, oh, that's nice. This is what you do. This is what we do. Great. And we invited them in to come and learn about our business so that a software program could be designed specifically for us as we were going to be becoming a computer active, you know, taking orders online through the computer software. And we invited somebody in who really liked our concept and decided that they were not going to do what they did any longer, and jumped on to making sculpted fruit arrangements the following year with a whole lot of technological expertise. A tremendous amount. So they had a lot of financial backing. They had a lot of IT expertise and a lot of family input and business savvy. And those were things that helped this other company to really grow and really be propelled out of the water. Whereas Susan and myself, we didn't have those things. And I would say another mistake that we made, thinking back on what we were talking about a little bit ago, was that we self-financed all of the business.
So you would not recommend that?
Not at all.
Okay.
That was not a good move, because when you self-finance everything, it's really coming out of your back pocket.
Yeah.
And your decisions are based sometimes more on emotionality rather than on what you really need to do.
So for something like that, would people go somewhere like SCORE to get some advice and maybe investment?
I would say SCORE would be a good place. If you have an advisor or somebody whose business model you admire, I would say seek them out. Ask them questions, do a lot of thinking, and make sure that you're funded, because I think that is the seat of the beginnings of what happened to us in our company, that we weren't properly funded. So a lot of our decisions were not made with the future in mind.
So I think, you've talked about the funding, you've talked about sort of the legal end of not having the right contracts and disclosures and things for people who came in. And I guess just sort of detaching from the emotionality of it, looking more at the extra
Right.
strategy and things like that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, looking back on it, it's easy to do. But when you're going through it and you know, it's a 24/7 thing because it's your own company, it never leaves you. It's always with you. You agonize over all the decisions.
Right.
In a very personal way. And I think that sometimes clouds judgment.
Now, your partner, was it Susan? She's family, right?
She's my sister-in-law.
She's your sister-in-law. How did it impact your relationship?
Well, remarkably enough, we were together for 30 years, and actually my son came into the business for the last 10 years.
Okay.
He was our creative director, and so we were really a family business. And it was a strain. I'm not going to say it isn't.
Right.
It's always hard to work with someone who you're related to because, you know, there are other things going on besides your business relationship. But truly, I would say on the whole, we did really well together.
Okay.
There were very few times when we totally disagreed and fought over anything. We usually mediated a solution.
Okay. Yeah, now as you're talking about the family business, you're making me think of a show, which I'm sure you've either heard of or seen, called The Prophet. Have you ever seen? And, you know, he goes into these, a lot of times, family businesses, and you really see the dynamics, you know, not necessarily of your situation, but some of the dynamics of these family businesses.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much other things that are brought into it, and, you know, it's sometimes amazing to watch what he's able to do, and sometimes not able to save it. But it's a very interesting show.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
The dynamic works against you.
Right. I can imagine it's probably hard. So, you know, ultimately, you know, you stepped away from the fruit arrangement business, and what made you decide to jump back in and get involved with another kind of, you know, now you're with Merry Maids. So what made you kind of make that leap?
Well, I wasn't really ready to call it a day.
Okay.
I needed a change, but I wasn't ready to say I'm going to hang it up and not work. And so I'm a working person. I've worked my whole life, and I really was looking for the right fit. I had a lot of skill, I think, because of being a small business, being a franchisor, working with other people across the country because we had franchises coast to coast. And I really wanted to find something where I would be able to use my skill set to help another company grow. And I was looking around. It took me a while. I had a few other offers, actually, which shocked me.
Doesn't shock me. You have great experience.
Which shocked me. But, well, you know, I'm kind of up there in years. It shocked me, but they weren't right for me. You know, I really thought that this isn't a good fit for me, and I'm just not going to do something just to get a paycheck.
Right.
Although that would be nice, because when you're in business for yourself, that doesn't always happen on a consistent basis.
Right.
So the opportunity to work with Merry Maids presented itself, and what happened was the owners of our franchise group, we have our owners, I think, have 6 physical locations, but many franchise units working out of each physical location. So it's probably a total of about, I want to say 15 actual territories.
Okay.
They were looking for somebody to be a service manager in one location. And I had applied for that because I thought, I think I could do that. I could do that. And when they read my resume, they called me and said, you know, we really have a need for somebody to do something a little bit more than that for us. We don't have anybody doing that job right now. They happen to be home-based in Towson, Maryland, and they have places in Delaware and Pennsylvania. And they were commuting back and forth because they're hands-on, very active owners. And they said, how would you like to come in and let's talk about this, what we could do together. And so they created a position for me, which wasn't before.
Okay.
And so now I became the regional manager, and I kind of help grow, nurture, mentor, coach those folks who are in Delaware and all of our Pennsylvania people.
Sounds like a perfect role for you, because I mean, you probably have so much advice to offer us from a coaching and consulting standpoint to these business owners.
I like to think I do.
I would think you do. So tell us about Merry Maids itself. I mean, I think probably most people out there know it's, you know, a cleaning company.
Right.
But tell us about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Merry Maids is the #1 residential cleaning company in the country, and they are international as well.
Oh, okay.
Merry Maids itself is a very interesting organization. For those people who follow, you know, big business, Merry Maids is a division of ServiceMaster. ServiceMaster is a huge company. ServiceMaster owns Terminix and a couple of other divisions as well. Merry Maids being a very small part of the ServiceMaster company.
Okay.
And so Merry Maids is, I want to say, almost a generic term for residential cleaning, like, Kleenex might be for tissues. When people hear Merry Maids, they automatically know what Merry Maids is. We've been around quite a long time, and we are a premier residential cleaning company, and we provide service at all levels for people who have efficiency apartments and just want them cleaned once every month, to people who have us come in twice a week and clean their whole house. We do all of the above. We also do small businesses as well.
So some commercials.
Oh, yeah. We're not a janitorial service because we don't work nights and we don't work weekends and we don't work holidays.
Okay.
It's a Monday to Friday operation, daytime. But we do like doctor's offices, law offices. There are a couple of other places that we would do that are just offices, where we can come in and kind of work around people or come before people come to work.
Right.
Because our folks come, our teams come at 7:30 in the morning to our office to get ready to go out.
So how would you say you distinguish Merry Maids from other cleaning businesses?
Merry Maids is a company that really prides itself on what we teach our teams to do and how we teach them to do it. There is a Merry Maids system. It isn't like, we hand them a bunch of, I want to say rags, but we call them microfiber cloths because that's what they are.
Okay.
We don't hand somebody just, rags and say, go clean. Make it clean, make it nice, just do your job. We have a system. It's a 6 to 10 day training program that every team member is put through, so that every single Merry Maids employee who's a member of a cleaning team is going to clean exactly the same way.
I see.
And our employees are background checked, bonded, insured, secured, and drug tested. And that's something that a lot of people in today's world are very interested in because of liability and security issues. We have teams of 2 that go in. We bring all of our own equipment. Our vacuums are the only vacuum that is approved by the American Lung Association. All of the solutions that we use for cleaning are green. They are Merry Maids products. We don't go out and buy off-the-shelf supermarket brand equipment. And our microfiber cloths are specific for each job, so we do not cross-contaminate. They're all color-coded, so that what goes in a bathroom never goes in a kitchen.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of information I didn't know. It's good information. Yeah. So I think the answer to this is I probably anticipate the answer to this already, but as far as independent businesses, sort of your, not an established company like a Merry Maids, but your mom and pop kind of business that either goes out themselves and cleans or hires a few people as a team, is that something that you feel you're competing with, or there's not even a comparison? That's like a whole different kind of thing.
Well, I would say yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're doing the same type of work that we're doing, but they don't necessarily do it the way we do it.
Right.
We have a system. We have Cleaning 101. And there is a prescribed system that is taught to each and every person coming through our door on how to clean. And so there are, might be 9 steps on how to clean a toilet.
Right.
And this is something that we find to be most important in training our people. They're competition, but we're out there. We're the industry leader, and we take that position very seriously.
Yeah, that's great. So as far as, I know your role is a lot of consulting and coaching with a number of the franchisors. What would you say is the most challenging part of that? I would assume that, some franchisors kind of fall in line more than others, and it's probably your job to kind of talk them into the ways of, the branding of the company and the larger kind of picture and all of that. So, yeah.
Well, just to clarify, our company is I work for a franchisee, and they have many locations, and each one of those is run by a service manager.
Okay.
And so what I do is I spend a lot of time working with the service managers to get them to grow, to help them to grow, to coach them and work with their teams.
Okay.
And so each of them faces challenges every day. And right now, one of the largest challenges we have is not so much finding work, although we always welcome new work. It's finding qualified people who are willing to work.
Okay.
You know, the hiring process has become very difficult because there are lots of people out there who say they want to work, but when it comes down to it, not so much.
Yeah. It's I mean, just on a personal level, I've seen some cleaning teams that we've used personally. They start out very strong, and then as time goes by, they're not as strong. And I'm sure it's probably different with Merry Maids because you do have the system, and everybody has to learn and do the different, everything you described to us. But I'm always interested to see how that happens. And I'm sure it's not just with the cleaning business. Unfortunately, it's probably with a lot of different businesses. You start out very, pro, I want to do the job well, and, it doesn't always work out that way. So it's probably hard to find good people, and it's hard to keep good people and all of that. So, yeah.
I like to speak to that point just for a minute because, it is hard to find good people, but what we do is we have people engaged in just quality visits. So we have quality assurance people who will go out on a very regular basis to visit with the teams in the homes to make sure that the quality is kept up.
That's great.
And that's really important to us. And and listen, everyone makes mistakes and everyone has off days.
Yeah.
And if they have had an off day, we guarantee that we will come back and redo the entire job of whatever is not working for the person, for the homeowner, right away, next day or the same day. Because quality is really what we're all about.
And good customer service.
And good customer service.
Yeah.
But there are problems in every business and, you deal with them.
Yeah.
You just do.
So is there anything in the works this year for Merry Maids that's kind of new and different, or?
Well, actually, yes. Yeah. Merry Maids is and I know we're, a little slow to the party, but we are in the next month or two rolling out our e-commerce site so that people will be able to go to the Merry Maids site and not just get a home estimate with somebody coming to your home, but have a really good idea, input all of your information about where you live and what you're looking for cleaning, how often, and you get a price quote online. You'll be able to get an idea of what it's going to cost you immediately. Of course, it's always important for us to come out and see what exactly it is you want because every person is different in the way they like things cleaned or done or how much done or how often done. And so that part of it won't go away. But now you'll be able to go online and really get a very good idea of what a cleaning will cost.
Great. Okay. So how can people reach Merry Maids if they're interested in the services?
Well, we are merrymaids.com on the web. All you need to do is input your zip code, and it will take you to the location that services you. There are locations throughout the entire greater Delaware Valley and most major areas coast to coast. So we're always available. We're always available to come out, to meet with you, to have an estimate, and talk about what your needs are.
And our last question, what is a networking organization that has worked well for you, whether it's for Merry Maids or your prior business, what is something that you would recommend to our viewers?
I highly recommend the Mainline Chamber. I've been a member for a long time with my former company and this company, and the Chamber is there to support, to teach, to educate, to help you grow your business. If you make use of your membership, I think there's no finer organization out there right now. It's a bargain for what it costs to join.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all your insight with our viewers.
My pleasure.
And until next time, thank you for watching.